everybody's person.
Coffee does get rid of that cough. Good morning. It is Sunday, and it is Sunday in October when everybody is interested in watching the colors change. Now in Florida, colors don't necessarily change as far as the trees are concerned, but maybe, just maybe, we might just be getting some new laws that might change the color of the people being arrested for cannabis. Let's find out. Let's get into the rotation. Good morning. My name is Gary Stein. I'm the political director and policy director of Oklahoma, and our master of public health. Directly below me, and his father told me I had to say it right this time, our deputy director, Carlos Jose Angel Armida, our deputy director and master of business administration. I am so sorry, Poppy. I did leave that out last week. I was not going to do it again. And coming to us from Terra Incognita, parts unknown, undisclosed location where he's probably hanging out with Dick Cheney. Our executive director, Christopher Cano.
Thank you. If I was hanging out with Dick Cheney, I'd be wearing a bulletproof helmet so I don't get shot in the face.
At least if you shoot him in the heart, nothing happens.
I have no comments about me and the former vice president. I see what happens when you make comments about that guy.
Absolutely. And we have a very special guest. Chris, would you want to go ahead and do the introductions?
Absolutely. So look, team, for everybody at home listening, I want you to understand that things are moving very rapidly in Florida on the court side. We are still pushing on the legislative side for marijuana reform, for changing laws, for catching up into the modern age. But the change that we see in the court system isn't happening by magic. It's not happening because there's some overwhelming organization. It's happening because of stellar individuals who are great at their craft, who have really mastered the ability to be amazing attorneys and to defend the rights of those who are being infringed upon, cannabis consumers in particular. And so we have one of those amazing attorneys with us today, and that's Tiffany Hilton, who is an indigenous criminal defense attorney, who was instrumental in drafting many of the parts of the most recent case that came out of the Florida Second District Court of Appeals that said that the police no longer have probable cause on the smell of cannabis alone to search your vehicles, which is something that we've seen in a variety of states that they have changed on the legislative side, like Maryland, Virginia, and it's been debated in the court systems of whether or not that law is valid because, of course, police don't like it when you take tools out of their toolbox. But we do know that cannabis prohibition has been the main indicator and tool to infringe on people's rights, to search people's cars, to really crack down and violate the civil rights of cannabis consumers. And I would say that prohibition in itself is an affront to civil rights. And so really celebrating, highlighting, and uplifting the folks in the legal system who are doing amazing work in protecting civil rights. And we're proud to have that person on today in Tiffany Hilton. Tiffany, welcome to the rotation.
Thank you so much. What an intro. So sweet.
It's yeah. I mean, they call it pretext basically, and a stop is usually considered what is called a pretextual stop, where they have an idea as to why they're stopping this person. Sometimes, I guess the Highway Patrol is very big on tag lights right now. If you have a tag light that's out, for God's sakes, replace it, because you can go in jail for the next 40 years just for having a tag light, because it's the pretextual stop, the reason they stop you. And for a long time, and I know that State Attorney Clark in Tallahassee had actually written a letter against it several years ago after the Farm Bill was approved, that smell can't necessarily be the reason for the stop. Although I really wonder, if you're driving past the policeman at 45 miles an hour, how he could possibly smell that. But it's amazing how it says on the opinion for this case He was stopped because they smelled cannabis in the car.
Well, so let me clarify.
Yeah,
So
let's get into
Please.
the legalese. We're just lay people here, Tiffany, so we appreciate you breaking it down for us.
So the stop was actually based on a failure to stop at a stop bar when exiting a private property. Are you guys familiar with that at all?
A stop bar when you exit a private property. You mean like that little kind of like dip in the pavement at the end of your driveway?
No, and nobody's familiar with this, but this is the best pretext in the world to stop somebody for, right? Because nobody knows this.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you're leaving a gas station. So that's a private property and you're entering a public roadway. Even if there is no stop sign, there is a line. That's a stop bar. So even if there's no stop sign, no traffic control device, anything, but you just roll out of that stop sign into the public, or roll out of that private property, into the public roadway, they can pull you over for that. And that is exactly what Mr. Williams was pulled over for in this case. Well, hit the driver of the vehicle. Mr. Williams was the passenger in the vehicle.
And yet it wasn't even admitted at during the very first paragraph of the opinion, as if that really didn't make any difference. What really made a difference was that the smell of cannabis in the car, real or imagined, was the pretext for beginning the arrest.
Well, Gary,
Correct.
can I pause us there for a second? Because I do want to clarify for those who are not familiar with the case. Mr. Williams is of African American descent. And like you just said, he was the passenger. And for all my black folks out there watching the show, you know what it's like driving while black in Florida. Even more so when you end up getting ID'd for a traffic stop you're not even driving for. And so it sounds like these are mitigating factors that are definitely part of the police interaction. And I mean, I'm not gonna allege or draw to any conclusions. I'm just pointing out the facts of we know how police interactions operate in Deep South.
And
Absolutely.
I overheard you saying that the stop bar was on private property. Was that's correct? Cops can
Yes.
pull you over for things for traffic infractions on private property.
So they can pull you over for not stopping before you go into the public roadway. So exiting a private property into a roadway, you're absolutely supposed to stop as you're backing out of your driveway right before you get to the public roadway. Of course, you know, it's not normally enforced unless, like you said, Chris, you're driving while black.
And the gentleman that was arrested was in the car. He was in the passenger seat.
Correct. So what happened is, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please. Go on.
So there was 2 law enforcement officers and they go up to the car and, you know, ask for ID and all that kind of stuff. They both say that they smelled the odor of marijuana. One of them says they smelled fresh marijuana, and one of them said they smelled burnt marijuana, which made a difference kind of in the interim until this Williams case came out. So that was their probable cause. That's what they used to order them out of the car. They said, get out of the vehicle.
Interesting. Wow. Now, for a long time, I've been telling folks, you know, and they didn't hear it from me, but you should always carry a what they call a tube of a hemp cigarette inside of their car, where it says CBD on it specifically. So if ever anybody says they smell something, you say, "Oh yeah, well, that's this," and it says CBD on it.
I mean, yeah, Gary, I get that. I wouldn't necessarily give folks that advice simply for the fact that I've had similar interactions, and like at that point, if you really do wind up with an officer who wants to grind an axe, you know, you'll have to fight it in the FDLE labs and after the fact in the court system. I think that the safest thing for a lot of folks is get you one of those smell-proof bags that actually has a lock on it, because that lock presents you an extra level of constitutional protection. You know, there's warrants now that have to be drawn up to break into a bag that has a lock on it. So if you know, and again, if you're and Carlos sells them at Chillum, exactly. So there's an opportunity there for you to get easy access to what you need. But I want to just go back to the whole idea of, for medical patients, people who are doing everything legally right, you know, and when it comes to their cannabis medicine, it is still much in the same way we treat an open container. You can still legally drink in this country if you have all the right credentials, you're the correct age. But you got to understand is that your medicine has open container laws, and so you have to treat it as such, no different than you would a bottle of wine that you uncorked at a restaurant. And so, Tiffany, I just wanted to go back to you as to really talk about how people, tips and tricks for the layperson to really protect themselves, to prevent their civil rights from being infringed upon, for being lazy when it comes to transporting their cannabis.
Can we do this in a certain way, Keno?
Yeah, go ahead, Carlos. I'll let you.
I would like to perform a skit with you, actually. So I am going to play the police officer, and you play the person that's being pulled over.
All right, and Tiffany's going to critique it as
critique it as you will, Tiffany. Tell us what we should do. Okay.
And Carlos is going to be a chubbo and a beardo who's a cop.
Yo, hey, what the fuck? What the fuck, Gary? Come on now.
I'm just following the guidelines of our current deputy director of defense.
You're like, Carlos is going to play the fat cop.
I didn't know you guys were going to be this funny.
Because they don't exist in Florida.
All right, kiddo. All right, so scene. All right, woo. Click.
Damn it.
Turn the music down. I'm knocking on the window. Sir, can you roll your window down? It's like, oh, hey, buddy. It seems like a Grateful Dead concert in there. I smell marijuana.
I don't smell anything.
Well, I smell it pretty hard. It smells like you've been burning a J in there.
Why'd you pull me over?
Well, I mean, you were on private property. You didn't stop before you pulled into the public roadway. There was that line on the floor, the stop line. You're actually supposed to stop there, even though there's no stop sign.
I didn't know I couldn't do that.
Listen, I smell marijuana. I'm gonna have to say, get out of the car.
I would prefer not to.
Well, I'm gonna need to search this car, sir. Are you impeding on my search?
I do not consent to any searches.
All right. Well, I smell marijuana, sir. It's either you get out of the car, or I drag you out of the car, man.
All right, man. All right, chill with the violence.
All right. What happened? Was I a good cop? First off, Tiffany.
Yeah, you were pretty. I mean, you were definitely too nice, and your words were probably too big, but that's okay. You were decent.
Carlos hasn't gotten pulled over enough to be able to get good practice on this.
It's been a while. It's been like 10 years since I've been arrested. So,
Chris,
also,
you
I was way too
shot.
calm because usually your hands are shaking when you're gonna cop.
Yeah, keep your hands on the steering wheel.
You would have been shot dead because it was like 3 times he asked you to get out. You got to get out the first time.
Yeah,
yes,
when I got pulled over in 2014 by TPD, they asked me to get out, and then when I said no, I'm not considering any searches, they reached into the open window and opened the door themselves, and then one cop grabbed me and slung me out of the car. So
Let me ask you a question.
We're being silly and everything, but this is a big thing, and like pretty much everybody, who smokes marijuana responsibly has heard those 3 things you can say in a police encounter, where it's like, I don't consent to any searches.
Why'd you pull me over?
Am I being detained or am I free to go?
Yeah.
And I think I'm forgetting the 3rd one. But
shut the fuck up is the 3rd one.
Oh, I would like to speak to an attorney as the 3rd one. Yeah, I want to speak to Tiffany. It's essentially.
You can call me.
So we know that, but I feel like that situation that I just illustrated with Kano offers like another thing you can say. Like if a cop pulls you over and they're like, I smell weed, right? What do you say now? Like what are you? Can you get out of that situation or?
Actually, another thing I want to ask is, in regards to the opinion on your case, is it going to be appealed by the state and go to the Supreme Court for an en banc review or anything of that sort? Or
I don't know.
But it's not active yet, correct?
No, it's active. That's the law.
Active.
October 1st forward. That is the law. And I'll explain why, because the Florida Supreme Court hasn't spoken to this issue. So just before, it was 2021, and the 2nd District Court of Appeal, which is controlling for Hillsborough County and our surrounding counties, right? it was shortly before the fifth DCA. It was 2021, second DCA in Owens said smell is still probable cause because it could be probable cause to believe that there's a DUI. So that in Hillsborough County, the smell of marijuana was still good. Then in 2024, the fifth DCA, which is not controlling on us, had an opinion case called Baxter v. State, and they said it's no longer probable cause because of all the changes, the legislative changes in the definition of cannabis. This case is essentially a progeny of that fifth DCA case in Baxter, because if you read the opinion, the second DCA is mostly quoting Baxter. And so what that does is resolve the circuit split. There was a circuit split between the second DCA and the fifth DCA. So the question was certified, and then the Florida Supreme Court would speak about it. But now there's not a circuit split. We're in agreement. So it's possible the Florida Supreme Court could address it. It's possible they wouldn't, because there isn't a circuit split right now. But there are plenty more circuits that could split.
Interesting. I mean, so when you go back to the case on Baxter, was that more of that court, basically kind of going back to what Gary was alluding to? Look, we can't tell the difference between hemp and weed these days. So, the legislature changed all these definitions. The smell alone isn't a probable cause of a crime, because you can have something funky that Carlos sells legally that could stink up your car.
Yeah, I've always felt that if a cop pulls me over and is like, do you have anything in the car? I smell something. I could just be like, well, sir, I own a hemp store, so that's probably what you're smelling. I just got off of work. And that would be enough to be like, okay, there's no more probable cause. And I think that kind of goes in with what Gary was saying. You keep a CBD joint in your car or something, just be like, it's this.
Yeah, I went to a show. I think it was in the MJ.
It's all very confusing.
Yeah. Carlos, I want to chime in on that for a second, because in 2014, when I got pulled over and arrested, they asked me, where are you going? And I was like, I just got off of work. They're like, where do you work at? And I said, medical marijuana, Tampa. And at that moment, they were like, get out of the car.
Well, and for good reason. But I did bump into a vendor at one of these shows. I think it was MJ BizCon in like 2018. He had those little trees like you have hanging in your car, and it was terpene scented. And I says, wouldn't you love to have the scent of terpene in your cars, every time you drive? And I say, wouldn't this be considered probable cause? And he said, no, it would actually be a defense against probable cause. If they smelled it, they say, oh, yeah, it's this, smell this.
But that's not true. It's not true. And the reason it's not true is because probable cause is the totality of the circumstances. That's what the Fourth Amendment analysis says, right? So whether the smell was really weed or it just smelled like weed prior to October 1st, at least in our jurisdiction, it didn't matter, because it's just the reasonableness of the actions of the officer. So would a reasonable officer have reason to believe that that was marijuana? And any judge in the state is going to say yes. Yeah. So prior to October 1st, that tree would have been probable cause. It wouldn't have even been an excuse, because the judge, if you try to file a motion to suppress, judge, it was an air freshener. The judge is going to say it was reasonable. He thought that was marijuana.
Now, Mr. Williams obviously had more than just the cannabis in his car. They patted him down and they found a bag of Molly in his pocket, correct?
Yeah, well, the way it happened is, so they smelled the marijuana. That was probable cause to search the car. They search the car and they find a bag of weed and some pills in the glove compartment. So they arrest Mr. Williams, who was my client, and they take him to the district. And then they search his person, and they find a powder in a bag in his sock. And he tells them, it's Molly. And that was what happened.
Interesting. I do want to, because I know there's always haters out there who don't, care for reform, and they'll nitpick at every little thing. And, people always want, when it comes to the legal system, put a morality test on people's characters. But, if the justice system can protect the civil rights of even people who most people on an everyday basis may not like personally or may not even associate with, that is what it really boils down to. Because if someone who you may not like's rights can be infringed upon, then anybody's rights can be infringed upon. So whether you like this guy or not, or whether you like Mr. Williams, whether you think he's not an upstanding member of society, the point is that his civil rights were infringed upon. And everything else, all those other mitigating factors after the fact of this search, which, you know, again, is a bogus search, especially considering we live in a society where, you know, you can buy legal products that are pretty funky, really does boil down to these are the type of things that are going to protect civil rights. Now, I know there've been campaign issues in the past. I remember the whole, when I was younger, Reagan and Bush and Dukakis and all the things about, you know, oh, look, they're letting criminals on the streets. And we see it even now in the political atmosphere around undocumented immigrants and this thing that people who commit crimes are not human, in the dehumanizing language of the legal system. But again, whether you think Mr. Williams is an upstanding citizen or not, the fact that his rights were infringed upon and the fact that they are not, that has been recognized by the courts is important, because even you as a red-blooded, upstanding American citizen can have your rights infringed upon by overzealous law enforcement with a quota system that just wants to make their interactions so that they can, you know, get their bonuses and meet their performance metrics.
Now, this
And
is
Oh no, that's Tiffany talk, Gary.
yeah, absolutely.
This opinion is important for everybody, and let me explain to you why. So let's just say, Chris, you get pulled over and your car gets searched, and the police say, I smell marijuana, I'm searching your car. And then I end up your attorney, right? And they search your car and they find a gun, but they don't find weed, which happens all the time. And then I come to visit you in jail, right? And you tell me, Miss Tiffany, there was no weed. I've never smoked weed a day in my life. It never smelled like weed in my car. Nobody ever has. I don't know. There's still nothing I can do because I can't prove that a cop didn't smell weed. Mm-hmm. Now it has to be the smell plus more, right? It's a full Fourth Amendment calculus. So I don't care if you smoke weed, if you do anything, never broke a law in your life. If you don't want the police getting into your car and ransacking it for no reason by just exclaiming, I smell marijuana, this opinion is for you. It's for everybody. Okay,
now this opinion, is it an active defense, or is it a block against undue search and seizure in the very beginning?
It's a block. So the police shouldn't. Well, the police shouldn't do it, but if they do, now I have a suppression issue to suppress all of that evidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so you still may end up in jail fighting for your freedom, but this will be a defense against it staying permanent.
So
as far as that's concerned.
I got a question, Tiffany, kind of like on procedure for our members and folks out there. If we, as an organization like Normal, started printing Know Your Rights cards and putting kind of a summary of Williams versus Florida and kind of what to say when a cop says your car smells like weed, would that you know kind of help people in a way, or would that be a exercise in futility?
So I mean, from my perspective, my card, if I was to give somebody a card like that, would be blank, because I think everybody should just shut up. If the police say your car smells like weed, okay. You know, if they ask you, do you have marijuana in your car, and you have medical marijuana, I think at that point is the time to produce it. The important thing is that you keep it in the packaging and know how much you can have at one time. And, you know, you can present it at that point, and it may potentially prevent a search of your entire vehicle. But the truth is, you're never going to argue your way out of something with an officer on the side of the road. It's just not going to happen. If they want to take you, they're going to take you. And if they don't, they won't. And that goes both ways, right? I've seen people let out of huge crimes just because the police didn't feel like dealing with it. And then I see people, you know, like this, you know, Mr. Williams ultimately is in prison for 10 years as a result of this. He did not get relief from this appeal. Just because this was granted, the court still affirmed his sentence of 25 years with 15 years credit, because he had already served 15 years in his violation of probation case. You know, they affirmed his sentence because, you know, that was the law at the time. The law the judge applied at the time was the law. So, you know.
So was he on probation when they got stopped?
Yes. And that was, you know, when they pulled him out of the car, he said, officer, I'm on probation. Yeah.
Having been on probation, in myself, for my own case, like I learned, like it is very clear. They tell you can't associate with any criminal elements. You have to be on the squeaky clean to get through it. So like just the fact that you're in a car where there's a possible crime being committed, with the smell of weed, that's just like, that gets you in trouble. And so it's, yeah, I see how all these things, like, even though he you win the case, you lost the war in a lot of ways. You're still locked up. So it's
And
pretty
it's
heavy.
really sad because this appeal was really important to him. He really believed in this. And so, but he changed the state. So
Yeah, that's heavy.
And it was a change for the entire state, not just the jurisdiction of the second district.
well, yeah, because the way it works is we have all these districts in Florida, right? Like Pinellas, Pasco is the 6th. Like there's a million districts, district court of appeals. But let's say like we're in the 2nd right now. Let's say I'm looking up what the law is and the 5th district says it's this and nobody else has spoken to that issue, then that's the law for the state, if that makes sense. Now, then if my district weighs in, then that's always going to be binding on me because the 2nd and the 5th have spoken and they're not in conflict. That's the law for the state.
I have spoken.
Yes.
So to go back to my question, the 3 things you can say, that's pretty much still it. If a cop says that, he smells weed in the car, he wants to search it, you're basically just saying, I don't consent to a search and I want to call Tiffany.
Yes, that's it. I don't consent to this, just so they can't, say
I
he
want
consented. And they still will in the police report, but I'll watch the body cam. So
And the
don't worry.
reasoning you put in the brief was basically the fact that it can't be sent alone. It has to be sent plus something else, some other piece of pretext that they want to pull up. Basically, is that the way it goes on this?
Yes. So it's odor plus. It just puts it in alignment with other forms of contraband in the state of Florida. Like for instance, you have pills. Like you can have a bunch of pills strewn about your dashboard if you wanted to, but if those pills are not at first glance immediately apparent contraband, it doesn't fit the plain view doctrine, which is where this plain smell doctrine comes from. Plain view just says if a cop is where they can be lawfully and they can see an item and the unlawfulness of the item is immediately apparent, you can't have any closer inspection, then they can seize that without a warrant. Plain smell was just an extension of that. So it's like I can smell it. And, courts have held over and over again that marijuana has a very distinctive smell. So plain smell was an extension of plain view.
That's kind of like why they nitpick so much about how dark your tint is, because they don't want to lose their plain view toolkit, if you will.
Exactly.
Now there was a case over on the West Coast. It's Florida v. Kerouac. It was Bridget Kerouac was a woman who had moved here from Maine. And she was going to grow her own stuff in her garage. And so she went to a hydroponics store and the police followed her home and made note of her address. They came back later and claimed that they smelled cannabis scent coming from her garage, which was dark at the time and she couldn't see it. Actually, all she had was just some hydroponic supplies. And I think there were a couple of clones that were maybe a half-inch tall, which they couldn't possibly have been in plain sight. Right. Yet the arrest was made, and it actually went to a jury trial. And Mike Minardi was able to get that sentence annulled, so that was good.
Yeah, I had cops come to my house once because of a variance in my electric bill.
Well, you gotta stop stealing cable.
Granted, Suncoast Normal, our address was listed as my home address for a little while, so that might have something to do with that. I've got a couple of questions, actually. I got 2 questions. One pertaining to this situation in particular, one to general medical marijuana. I heard that because this was done in a certain district court, that the smell that only applies to a certain part of Florida, not necessarily the entire state. Does that hold ground or?
Well, so like I was saying, because us and the Fifth are really the only districts that have spoken to the issue in Florida, it is controlling in other districts. So in other words, like if you're in the Sixth, I mean, you can't, what the second DCA and the fifth DCA have said is going to be applied in the Sixth, more than likely, unless they split, but they haven't spoken to it. So in other words, in every jurisdiction right now, smell is not probable cause. Smell alone is not.
So here at Chillum, we, not to give a shameless plug, but we offer a discount to medical marijuana patients. We 25% off. Come on down. But one thing I noticed offering this discount is sooner or later, we had people just coming in and they weren't even showing the hemp tenders, the store clerks, their card anymore. They were just, they had shown the card once and they remembered it. And I was like thinking about it. I was like, damn, like their medical marijuana status could expire. And there could be people that have been coming here for years, not showing their card and getting a 25% off discount. So I'm telling my employees now to check the card, that they have to have the card and it has to be a valid, expired card. And most of the time people say, I never keep my card on me, because at the dispensary, they just check my license and look me up in the registry, right? If they get pulled over without their card, even if they are on the registry, they're still fucked, right? Like the cop is going to arrest them.
Well, that depends. Again, it depends. It's kind of a totality of the circumstances thing, right? I would absolutely say always have your card on you. But the statutory regulations actually say that it needs to be in its original packaging with your prescription label on it. And I always tell people I would suggest going with the receipt as well, because why not? Why wouldn't you? I mean, the thing is that, like you said, at the end of the day, like if the cop just doesn't like the way you look and they want to take you to jail, you're fucked either way, but the more you have, the better your case is if you are unfortunate and they take you anyway and you get me. Because if you showed them your card, the receipt, your labels, I can get you out of jail very, very quickly.
I would suggest keeping the sticker, keeping the seal on the package. If they staple the bag, keep the bag stapled. If your individual product has a sticker on it or a piece of tape, don't break that tape until you get home.
Do we know if cops can like look up people's name in the registry?
Yes, they can. They can, and they should. But I will be honest with you. I had a client with a perfectly valid medical marijuana card. He was straight from the dispensary. He had everything he was supposed to have, but his medical marijuana card in his wallet was his old one. Even though his card was valid, it was expired. They still took him to jail. And I had to do a whole motion to dismiss to get rid of that charge for the client. And he sat in jail months, 6 weeks, maybe 2 months.
I remember too, one of the instances when my interaction getting arrested was, they civil forfeited my car, my laptop, and my cell phone. And my attorney had told me, like, hey man, you got 10 days to challenge this. And if this doesn't go your way, you're going to lose everything, or you can just pony up the money and pay the fines to not have your stuff taken away and sent to auction. So like that feels a lot like fleecing the American citizens in a lot of ways, American residents, taxpayers, whatever. I mean, just getting pulled over. And in Florida, people still don't understand the felony amount is still 20 grams. So, you don't even have to have a whole ounce on you I didn't even have an ounce on me. I had less than half an ounce. Carlos knows this because we smoked about 2 or 3 after I left this house. Before I left this house. So what winds up on paper, it can still, if it's more than 20.
Weigh the bag, and they're gonna if they're on the side of the road, they're gonna take some grass clippings and throw it in the bag.
They weighed it on a running cruiser with the scales doing like this on the hood.
With their finger on it.
Yeah, they put a whole grinder. They put a whole grinder on the scale, the whole thing. It was like, more than 25 grams. You're getting a felony,
And imagine these people with like 3 grains of like fentanyl, which it's fentanyl, but they're like, oh, you know, whatever. And then they put it in the whole jar and they charge them with trafficking fentanyl, and they're detained pre-trial for months and months and months. And then it comes back from Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And of course, it's not a trafficking amount because FDLE doesn't weigh it in the packaging. So yeah.
But by that time, you're fired from your job. You know,
Mhm.
you could have your kids taken away. There are so many other factors that go along with having your civil rights violated. And for the vast majority of people who don't have these interactions in their life, they're oblivious to the fact that these things are real, that they go on. And then, you know, they're not, they don't have any empathy for communities that are over policed and targeted in this way. And I think that's a big disconnect we have in America, because we say we cherish freedom and we love our Constitution, but when it's trampled upon by the very public servants that we empower to protect us, you know, where do we go for relief? And then really it's people like you who are sticking up for us in the court system. And there are few and far between. I mean, and what we know about a lot of indigent defense attorneys, especially the ones who work in the public sector, you got vast caseloads, and you're going up against a state that essentially has unlimited resources. So Tiffany, how do you like really, you know, how do you deal with that on a personal level and coming to the table as a professional, knowing that you're trying to balance the scales of justice uphill?
That is a big question. For me, every day is just a practice of making sure that I put my client first and I take my ego out of everything, because it's really easy for me to get salty about a win or about a loss, or, you know, this about a win or whatever. But I just have to constantly remember it's not about me, right? And my goal is to leave this earth a little bit better than I came to it. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and so I want her to have more rights than I have. And right now where we sit, she has less than I had when I was her age, you know?
Yeah.
I think it has a lot to do with what state attorney is currently over the jurisdiction you have right now. In Andy Warren, I think we had a lot more sympathetic ear. I can't say as much for the current one in Hillsborough County right now. I was surprised when Jack Campbell in Tallahassee came out with that letter in 2018, where he suggested to all the rest of other state attorneys that the scent should of cannabis should no longer be considered probable cause because of the Farm Act of 2018. And the fact that they don't have a test, actually a field test, that accurately can tell the difference between hemp and cannabis.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's one thing I wanted to ask you too. I had an employee that got pulled over, was obviously profiled, was a white girl with dreadlocks. I believe the cop claimed that he smelled something in the car, right? I don't think they actually found any. They found mushrooms, but they didn't find any marijuana. But they gave her a roadside test, and she said that she wasn't high at all. But the cop was like, "Oh, I fluttered a little bit. Like, you must be stoned. We're gonna arrest you." And I got Minardi to help her out. Minardi, you know, was actually able to get her off. You know, and how accurate are these things? It's my opinion, right? We said if the cop wants to take you to jail, he's going to take you to jail. And this is one of their tools. Like, they could just say, "Oh, I saw you twitch a little." And, you know, that's it. You know, you're going in.
So those tests are a joke. And the particular one that you're talking about is the HGN, the horizontal gaze nystagmus test. And what's funny about it is that it's not even really standardized. And a large portion of the population is born with a natural nystagmus. Mm-hmm. And this is all just comes from my research, because I love to cross-examine an officer about how unreliable these things are. And most of the time they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that." I know you didn't know, but I just wanted the jury to hear, "Have a nice day, sir." You know, so yeah, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. None of it's real.
Tiffany, so, I want to go back to
one second, one second, and then I'll shut the fuck up. But
don't ever do that, Carlos.
So if you're in that situation where a cop is like, "Do you consent to taking a roadside test?" Do you take it, or are you just like, "You know what, dude, just suspend my license for a year"?
That's like the $1 million question, right? That is the $1 million question.
Yeah.
I think that you should probably not take it and just shut up. Because that never hurts anybody. I mean, yes, you're going to lose your license for a year, but like, you don't know. What if in the middle of doing that test, a car drives by and scares you, and then you jump off the straight line you're trying to walk on? The state will take that 5-second clip and show it to the jury over and over and over again. And so you really have to think about things like that. I have never heard a story, and maybe you guys can correct me. I've never heard a story of somebody doing the roadside test and going home, but maybe you guys have.
No. I would say in my 42 years and in the numerous police interactions I've had since being a 16-year-old driver, if you get to the escalate to the point where they're saying roadside test, you're goner. Like the roadside test, the roadside test is 99% is subjective in a lot of ways. You know, it's like they're going to find. I've seen it to other friends, like wasn't me, but another friend, the same stigmatism. Oh, your eyeball jiggled. It's like that dude does have a stigmatism, and it's nighttime and lights are shining in your eyes because it's night out. But then you got cars coming this way, shining their headlights in your eyes and got the brights on, and it's like, oh, your eyeballs jiggled. You're going into, oh, your pupils dilated. It's like, yeah, a car just drove by, flashing me in my eyes. So yeah, it's crazy. But Tiffany,
if they have you on the side of the road auditioning for your freedom, you're going to jail. Your freedom's gone.
Now on the subject of police interactions in the car, one of the things that I've seen in other states is the discontinuation of police dogs, basically being run around the cars for weed. Now, one thing that we have a problem with in Florida is two things, especially in North Florida, certain officers planting evidence on people. We saw it up in the Panhandle in Marietta, Florida, up in that area. From between Tallahassee and Pensacola, like that's the danger zone to get pulled over. And near the I-10 area, and some of those cops are dirty enough to throw stuff in people's back seats. I mean, we've seen it even. Thank goodness there are body cams now in this day and age. But I've even seen cops force a dog to false hit, and when a dog is not smelling anything, they're trying to force a hit. So I do know the Supreme Court has ruled certain things around the fact that they can't delay a traffic stop to order a dog to come and search, especially if you say I'm not consenting to any searches. But where are we at in Florida right in this moment, like with the issue of dogs and the stop? Can you expand a little bit about how that can go down, or how it should not go down, rather?
Well, I mean, I really wish I could, but being that this new case that the smell of marijuana alone isn't probable cause is only 19 days old. To be honest with you, I haven't really thought through or talked through with anybody what that would look like for drug detection dogs. But, dogs are generally, my understanding at least, which I think is probably decent compared to like just a normal person, is that they're trained to recognize specific substances. So I guess the way around that would probably be to say, well, this dog is trained to detect the presence of methamphetamines and opioids, or whatever the case may be, and then say the dog alerted to that. But if you want to give me a call in like 6 months, I could tell you how it's been shaken out in the courts since the October 1st Williams decision.
And for all you dog lovers out there, my lay understanding of how they train these dogs is to turn them into junkies. And so that way, when the dog smells it, they're like, yeah, that's the good stuff. So, if you think it's inhumane to treat dogs like that and train them as police dogs, if anything, they should be training for we need more dogs to be trained to protect us at airports and cruise ships, rather than forcing them to be used on American citizens at traffic stops.
How do they administer? Like, do they blow smoke in the dog's face? Like, what?
I don't know. Tiffany's up to date on the latest training, but I would just say that's my main thing. Like, poor little puppy becomes a cokehead at 6 months old, and then he's like, "Oh, he's got the blow in the car, boss."
Yeah, you got to marinate that rawhide it chews.
That's good.
Well, the thing is, I don't know how they train them to recognize the scent, but I did recently learn at the Benchmark conference, we had a demonstration of a canine officer with a canine dog, and I did learn to your point about animal abuse, that they actually don't eat in their entire life if it isn't a piece of food given in response to an action that trainer wants them to perform. So the trainer explained to me that dog has never had a single piece of food that wasn't given as a result of the dog demonstrating some behavior the trainer wanted him to. And I thought, wow, that's terrible.
Yeah, the poor dog is hungry and the trainer wants him to engage in a false hit for the purpose of taking your ass to jail. The poor dog is like, yeah, I'm hungry, man. Yeah, he got the shit. Give me a treat. Like, that's so messed
the
up.
dog doesn't eat unless it frames a minority.
Exactly.
No bullshit, Carlos. That is sad that we live in that type of society.
I need to hear a slur or you're not getting anything to eat. Starve.
This is turning into a Dave Chappelle quick.
All right, let me just roll it back just a minute, because I am interested in knowing the genesis of your reasoning that you used in the brief that made this case, this Court of Appeals case, go forward, and why did it go to the Court of Appeals?
Sure. So the motion, and I always want to shout out my friends. So my friend Paige wrote the motion. It was, like I said, we did like a relay race on this. But the motion was based in my it was becoming like a thing to write these motions because of the legislative changes that happened. So in 2017, the definition of marijuana in the state of Florida changed. And so it excluded marijuana as defined in Florida Statute 381.98, which is, of course, the medical marijuana statute. There's also the Hemp Act, which you've talked about, the Farm Bill. And so the difference between the two statutes is that the medical marijuana statute prohibits the smoking of, medical marijuana in a vehicle. However, the Hemp Act doesn't do that. And so once smokable hemp products became legal, there is no regulation to this very moment. Right now, there is no regulation as to whether you can smoke smokable hemp in the car or not. So that's really the basis, is the changes in definitions to words in the statute and what is and what isn't marijuana. And what the Hemp Act did was it made in Florida, marijuana was no longer a controlled substance or an adulterant, and that's pursuant to the definitions in the Hemp Act. So that was the basis for the motion, is because the courts weren't giving proper acknowledgement and practical effect to the change in the law. And so that's what they're supposed to do. Statutory construction, it's supposed to be a plain language, give effect. What do those words mean? And that's how you're supposed to interpret statutes. And that's what the motion was based on. You're not interpreting this right. You're not interpreting this right. And then the appeals court agreed. They agreed. You're not giving enough deference to the change in the law. The law says this. So how can you say this?
Interesting. And on a practical standpoint, the hemp stuff that Carlos, and I've tried out all of the stuff that he's been selling, for some time, is not the same as the THCA cannabis that is out there in other smoke shops right now, in part because they've been infusing it with THCA to increase that levels of that thing. Even though it's legal to grow it without it, you can sell it after you add this stuff, which is kind of weird. So what do they do when they have a cannabis joint or a hemp joint that's in the car, and they test it? If they can actually test for it, and it tests positive for hemp, but it's actually high THCA. What are they doing now? Is there any change in that?
No. It's just the probable cause. The only thing this affects is the probable cause. So if they're finding that in the car, they either had probable cause, or then I'm going to file a motion to suppress for you. So that's the only thing it does. It changes whether they can get in to find that hemp joint or find whatever may be in your car, even if nothing at all. It just stops them from ransacking your car just because they smell weed or didn't, but said they did on their body cam. And I have no way to prove what a cop smelled or didn't.
Okay, so they can't stop you for the smell alone, but they have to do it with smell plus something else.
Yeah, they have to see something. I would assume that probably what they're going to do going forward is to go by, and this is just my guess, but indicators of impairment. So they may say, "Oh, I smelled marijuana," and they had bloodshot, glassy eyes, which is exactly what they do for DUIs, right? I smelled marijuana, and they had bloodshot, glassy eyes. I mean, the alcohol. Oh, excuse me, for the alcohol, they smell alcohol, the bloodshot, glassy eyes. I think that's where they're going to go with this. It's logical to me.
I mean, I can see that be a real problem for Donnie Jr. because like his eyes are constantly bloodshot and red.
That guy can't drive.
Man, I
There's
just
no
wish
way.
he stopped doing bumps before he gives news interviews on Fox News, because he's always like, I'm like, dude, like seriously. And to be fair, both our past presidents have sons that love to do bumps. I mean, I saw Hunter do one live at the 4th of July show, the White House balcony. He turned him. I'm like,
I wish I was there. That's so cool.
That is so
good for him.
I'm just like, y'all wild, man. Being a president's kid, like the Obama girls, when they gave Malia all that shit because she got caught smoking a joint at Lollapalooza. I'm like, well, where else do you smoke a joint if you're at Lollapalooza?
She's black, Chris. You know why?
Yeah, exactly.
What the difference is.
But the Hunter and Donnie Jr. could do bumps on TV and everybody acts like that's normal to scratch your gums while you give news interviews,
Now, I'm not certain if this is true or not, but I understand that the previous police chief of in Tampa had more deference to making certain that more folks of color got arrested, and that same person who's currently mayor and who currently signed a law called 285G that automatically deputizes all police as ICE agents is continuing along those lines. Can you say to the mix of various clients you have as an indigenous person's lawyer, had to be more people of color?
Are you saying the majority of my clients, are they people of color?
Yes. In a long roundabout way.
Yes, they are. I would say most of my clients, yes, are people of color. I would say a very large percentage of them have mental health issues. Most of them have never had access to resources, to almost anything in their life.
Tiffany, how long have you been working in the court system locally in the Bay Area?
Well, it depends on how you quantify when I started, but I would say my very first actual experience taking cases and things like that came in 2021, which was over in Pinellas County. And I did a certified legal internship and was able to take some cases. And then, later that, no, it was actually the summer before. So I guess it would have been like 2020, 2021 when I represented a transgender incarcerated woman of color pro bono in the Northern District of Florida. So since then.
Well, the reason I bring it up is because at the end of the tenure of the current mayor, when she was police chief, and the previous Mayor Buckhorn, Tampa was investigated by the FBI essentially for issuing a disproportionate number of bicycle infraction tickets to African American males.
Biking while black.
Yeah, they ran the statistics, and black men make up around 6% of the city's population, but they got over 90% of the tickets. And I'm like, so what? Black folks just don't give a shit about bicycle safety? No, that is not the conclusion, right? Any normal social scientist will draw the conclusion, wow, these people are being over-policed and targeted. And so since that time, now granted you came in in 2021, but have you seen the statistics change on the back end, or do we still see a disproportionate of people of color being over policed and having their rights violated in the court system, just from a social scientist point of view, not as an attorney, but just looking at the stats?
No change. I mean, a lot of my cases come from a black man's on a bicycle and he's going the wrong side on the road. Like, who even thinks that you have to go a certain way on a freaking bicycle? You know, I mean, generally, yes, you do. You have to follow traffic controls and stuff, but like they don't go around arresting little kids, like driving circles in the road on a bicycle, right? But they stop these Black men all the time. Tons of my cases come from situations like that. It's ridiculous.
So yeah, I just want to point out real quick, they are not stopping kids in New Tampa riding through their neighborhoods without their helmets on, but they are, stopping African American men riding in East Tampa without a full-on headlight and reflector and bicycle helmet.
And yet Hillsborough County is renowned throughout the state as an area with a high degree of bicycle injuries due to cars hitting bicycles and vice versa, correct?
That I don't know, but I believe you.
Yes, Gary. The Tampa Bay area is one of the highest for bicycle to car accidents that we have in the state, let alone probably in the country. And yeah, so like, is all this over policing making it safer? Are the bicycle fatalities going down? The answer is clearly no. And I'm talking about all this. Some people may not like to talk about it because it's an uncomfortable conversation. But for all the reform that we're accomplishing, I have heard the critiques and criticisms that it feels like we're just making reforms for white folks because despite the fact that it is legal, despite the fact that we win these case precedents around the probable cause and smell, despite the fact that we're discontinuing police dogs for traffic stops in certain states, there are still a disproportionate amount of African American and Latino Americans being searched, having their cars tossed, even in legal states. It is still something that is happening to this day, and it is an uncomfortable conversation that we need to address. When we say we need to change policing, it's not an overly liberal or leftist thing to say the police system needs to be reexamined. There are folks who, that's where you get the motivation for people to say, well, we need to defund the police, because why the frack are we sending all this money for us to have our communities terrorized and our rights violated? So for those folks who can't see that perspective of liberals, oftentimes of the whole leftists of saying defund the police, that's where that is coming from. It's not coming from a place of, oh, we want absolute anarchy. It's like, well, we're paying these tax dollars out of our hard-earned paychecks every 2 weeks, every week. And then for some reason, we're giving that money away to be over-policed and attacked. I mean, that's just, that's why people feel some type of way. And again, I want to just address the fact that we have shortcomings in our policing. And, again, the freedom that we so espouse to love in America is often under attack every day by street level bureaucrats who are not trained. I mean, you go to a police academy for several weeks, but Tiffany, you had to go for several years to get your legal education. I mean, yes. So how is that? The people who are in charge with enforcing the laws don't get as much training as the people who handle it on the back end. And then we wonder why we're in these situations, why we're even having this discussion today.
Right. And they don't care either. They don't care about the law, to be honest with you.
It's not like we don't need law enforcement. And law enforcement do a lot more than just pull over people for because of what color their skin may or may not be, or whether they use salami or not in their Cuban sandwiches. But we do have situations like, for instance, when a child with autism elopes and disappears, the police jump in to help find that person. For a long time, for some odd reason, they had police actually selling the bands that LoJack was selling them the controller for, to help find those kids faster. But the fact is, they do a job to protect the police and to protect the peace, I should say. And so therefore we do respect law enforcement in that respect, and actually keeping the peace and arresting the bad guys if that's what they're doing, hopefully.
Well, Gary, in the state of Maryland, I want to just add on, in the state of Maryland, they passed a law that allows people who are on the spectrum to voluntarily put a multicolored butterfly on their ID. And so that way, when they have a police interaction, the cops know, like, oh, okay, I need to take this seriously. This person has underlying conditions. Because what we've seen previously in this state is that if you got autism and you get pulled over by the cops and you're an autistic person of color, as it was said earlier, you're getting shot. We've seen it. We see someone with their hands on the ground, hands up, still get shot. Like, that's where we're at with policing in this state and in America. And as Tiffany said, it's not like it's gotten any better in the past few years since she's been actively practicing law.
Tiffany, I know we got to wrap this up there, but I do want from you to know what is the right path for people to take if they get pulled over. And if the policeman says, I pulled you over because I smelled something coming from your car as you drove by at 45 miles an hour.
Just be quiet. Just be quiet, because then you can't say anything that screws you later. Just be quiet. I smell weed, okay. And if you have legal medical marijuana, say I have legal medical marijuana, and just hand it and don't editorialize. That would be my biggest suggestion, because you don't know if 2 words that you say are going to be chopped out of your body-worn camera by the state attorney and played over and over and over again in front of a jury, because they do it.
Well, I'm glad that we had you on today, Tiffany, to really give us an update on where we're at with the state of current affairs, to really give us in the reform movement a reality check that despite all the work we're doing, there's still a lot more work to be done. And we appreciate all the amazing work that you're doing. So if you just want to kind of close it out, tell folks, just, what they can do as far as reaching out, I guess, I know you're not someone who's in this for the money. You're in it for the cause and for protecting civil rights. So just how they can, reach out and just get the help that they need if they need it.
Sure. If you want to reach me, just look me up online, Tiffany Hilton. I'm happy to answer questions. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, stuff like that. But I just represent indigent individuals. So money can't buy me. So don't try to hire me. But, if you feel so inclined, I would love if you would donate to Normal or in lieu, also the ACLU of Florida. Let's just keep these groups that keep us all protected and get this legislative work done, protected and going.
Thank you. Now, I should mention that we do have 2 bills that had just got passed, got filed in the Senate, which may encompass some of the work you do future on. The first one, of course, is protections for government employees who have a medical card, where they cannot be necessarily fired for having a medical card alone. And if they are going to get tested, they need to get heads up and things of that sort, and make it so that just the use of cannabis on off hours and when you're not on duty should not affect your job as a government employee. And we're looking forward to that going forward. And we use the ADA for that, saying that if a person is using it, it's because they're a disabled person and therefore need accommodations in the workplace. The second one is protection for parental rights, which basically says if the Department of Children and Families comes to your house for whatever reason, use of cannabis by a medical patient in the house is not reasoning to remove the children from the house. They can't petition the CPS to go ahead and remove the kids from the house. And we're looking forward to those moving forward. We have house sponsors that we are considering right now to co-sponsor that, get the companion bill going, and we're hoping that those and other things we are putting through this year will change the system and make your job a little bit easier.
Yes, yeah. I couldn't have filed. We wouldn't be able to file motions like this if you guys didn't do the work getting the legislature to change laws. So it's all a big circle.
Well, Tiffany, again, we appreciate all the amazing work you do. I was saying before the show started, I first got a chance to really see you show up at the decriminalization hearings when it came to the city of Tampa, and we were pressing the city council to adopt the civil citation ordinances. And even since the adoption of that, we all knew, like, oh, this is going to be great, but we knew it was still going to be disproportionate. We knew where they're going to write the tickets and where they weren't going to write the tickets. And so I think to this day, there's still a lot of work to be done in the city of Tampa. There is a major election coming up in the city of Tampa elections where we have the opportunity to move forward with new candidates and new visions for the city, rather than going back to the same old candidates and the folks who have brought us to this point where we have this disproportionate policing. So I would encourage all those folks, we have such abysmal turnout in our local city elections, to really get active. Right now, there is a special election happening in the city of Tampa that is coming up. and folks are already getting ready to cast the ballots in the runoff between Nia Young and Reverend Scott. And again, if you want to see
baby.
District 5, yeah, East Tampa, Ybor City. If you want to see bold, new, youthful, and vibrant visions for the city, then pick the newer candidates rather than going back to doing the same old that we've had. I'm not going to make an endorsement publicly to any candidate. I'm going to say that if the definition of insanity is continuing to do the same thing over and over and expecting different results, and so that's going to apply to every city election that is coming up, whether it's the special one or the big one that we got coming up in 27. And the same thing applies in 2026 in these midterms. You know, we have for years advocated and pushed to get some change in this Florida legislature when it comes to cannabis reform. This employment protection bill Gary's talking about, this will be the 6th year that this is introduced, and I'm hoping that this is not the 6th year that the party in power chooses to not give it a committee hearing. And I think that's really what it boils down to, is that you got to make a change politically when things are not going the right way. And you're only going to do that by getting active and voting. And I'm at a point now, I'm like, I don't even care who you vote for at this point, but just be active enough and educate yourself enough. Because what I've learned is that once you become politically educated, you won't make the same decisions that you made in the past. You'll realize it, you know, and you won't be a cheerleader for either your team or another team. It's not about being a cheerleader. It's about being an active citizen, because you know, I believe a philosopher, whose name escapes me, once said the consequence of not being active politically is that dumb people make all your decisions for you. So again, I think with all that, Carlos, it's time for the normal news. All right, so at the top of the news hour, big story coming out. The FBI says that marijuana possession arrests have comprised over 20% of all drug-related arrests in 2024. State and local law enforcement made nearly 190,000 marijuana possession-related arrests in 2024, comprising more than 22% of all drug arrests nationwide, according to data compiled by the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation and posted on the Crime Data Explorer website. According to the database, the police made at least 204,036 arrests for marijuana-related violations last year. This total is an underestimate because some of the law enforcement agencies fail to report their arrest data to the FBI. We have a big problem with that with local and law enforcement here in the state of Florida. And the total also fails to calculate how many cannabis-related arrests are included in the tens of thousands of unspecified drug abuse violations that are reported by the FBI. Of those arrests, 92%, 187,792 arrests out of 204,036 were for marijuana possession. The other 16,244 marijuana-related arrests were defined as sales and manufacturing. Overall, the FBI reported 831,446 arrests nationwide for drug-related offenses in 2024. The 2024's marijuana arrest totals are lower than in prior years, and they continue to trend that. And that trend began nearly a decade ago when state governments initially began regulating the adult use marijuana markets, leading to a dramatic decline in cannabis-related arrests in those jurisdictions. And since 2012, 24 states and the District of Columbia have legalized the adult use of marijuana possession. Now, I just want to give a quick commentary on that. Despite all this progress, again, we're still seeing over-policing. We're still seeing people fired from their jobs. We're still seeing kids taken away from parents. Even the fact that half the country now has it legal. But I do want to say that, you know, this is interesting in that from 2020 to 2024, we saw about 1.2 million marijuana arrests, which goes back to the high point of prohibition during the Bush administration, the two administrations of George W. Bush, where we were looking close to 8 million marijuana arrests from 2000 to 2009. So there's a lot to be said around progress and seeing the significant drop in numbers and the great work that NORML is doing, but the mission is not done. We need to continue to do that. And for us to move forward and really cater to you, the members, and to the general public of where you want to see the reform movement go, we need you to take the 2025 normal member survey. Carlos is going to drop the link there for folks. You can look at it in the comments. But the cannabis landscape is rapidly changing, both politically and culturally. And to better navigate this climate and best serve the cannabis community, Normal needs your input. By completing the survey, you're going to help us understand how we can better represent your interests in our lobbying, our organizing, our outreach, and education efforts. It takes about 10 minutes to do the survey. And right now, National Normal says that if you complete the survey by November 15th, before midnight, you'll be entered to win a $100 Normal gift card from the Normal gift store. So you can get some of that amazing Normal swag that you can rock out there in the streets. So just wanted to point that out for folks and let them know that we're trying to continue to push forward and push reform in a healthy way. Now, for a lot of attorneys watching today, some of you may not know this, but Normal is actually certified. We have a Normal National Legal Committee to provide continuing legal education credits. You can get your CLEs by attending the annual Normal Key West Legal Seminar, which for over 35 years has attracted attorneys from all around the country. And it's going to be held this year, December 4th through the 6th at the Hyatt Centric Key West Resort and Spa. This fully accredited legal seminar has become a great opportunity. It's just absolutely wonderful for folks to commiserate, to hear the latest on the various issues happening across the country, whether it's here in Florida, whether it's in the business sector, in the various states of Colorado and such. And it's a great, relaxing atmosphere. And you get the opportunity to meet the founder of Normal, Keith Straub, and the amazing folks on the National Normal Legal Committee and our board of directors. So I would definitely say check it out. Visit the Normal website, normal.org/Key West. Sign up and register if you're an attorney and you need to get your CLEs done. Give you a great opportunity there to get that happening. Now, let's move over to some of the latest news in regards to research and medical commentaries. This is coming out of the Journal for American Medical Association Network Open, and it says that it's indefensible for clinicians to remain willfully ignorant about medical cannabis. And I think that this latest commentary is really important because clinicians are increasingly confronted by patients using cannabis, and they're often unsupervised and poorly informed themselves. And as the commentary goes on to state, it is no longer defensible for clinicians to remain willfully ignorant. Medical cannabis is here. It's a reality. Okay. And physicians need to catch up. And, through omission or continuing to let patients navigate this therapy alone is not the right thing for a doctor to do. It's if you're a doctor, you're a little bit older in your career, and this just wasn't taught to you in medical school. The endocannabinoid system itself wasn't properly discovered and how it interacts with the body until the 90s. And then even as you saw from last week's episode with Dr. Barlev Schleider, that there is still a lot of research that is on the cutting edge that's still being done. But as a doctor, you need to take the time to educate yourself. Part of the issue that we've had with the medical marijuana system in Florida is so few doctors are actually certified. For the close to 1 million patients we have, the doctors range in just a couple thousand that are passing out certifications. And it's not a pill mill thing. Again, it goes back to doctors either being willfully ignorant or not taking the time to educate themselves. But you can get certified as a physician in the state of Florida by taking the recommended Department of Health a certification test. And it's important to educate yourself. I mean, Dr. Greg Gerdeman is an amazing local scientist and doc that is doing amazing research and educating other folks in the medical field. And I think it's important that we take advantage of the amazing resources we have both in the Bay Area and in the state of Florida in doing that. Now, let's move on and talk about some literature reviews. Cannabis formulations reduce dementia-related agitation and aggression, according to a systemic review published in the Journal of Psychopharmacology from research coming out of Italian investigators, where they reviewed data published from studies involving 278 participants, and the study subjects were at least 60 years old and suffered from either Alzheimer's, vascular, or mixed dementia. This is something that's near and dear to me because this is something that my father struggled with towards the end of his life. And I know there's so many families that are touched by it. And it's really important, as we saw from last week's episode, some of the amazing cutting edge work that Dr. Barlev Schleider was working on and producing has a lot to do with these patients in dementia. And most studies identified a positive effect of cannabinoid intervention in reducing behavioral disturbances. And agitation emerged as the symptom most consistently benefiting from cannabinoid use. Notably, the observed changes surpassed those reported in similar randomly controlled trials, evaluating the effects of antipsychotics and antidepressants. And let me tell you, pumping a loved one who's already in a state where they're losing their mind, they're scared, they're unsure, full of antidepressants and antipsychotics, especially for those of us who just hear the commercial interactions when they're advertising them on TV, and it's like that they run through them so fast while they show positive images on the screen. And then there's this cannabinoid therapy, which is actually doing something amazing and is working better than some of the pharmaceuticals that we're seeing. So this is important for folks to pay attention to, especially if you have loved ones that are suffering. Now, an analysis that recently got published in the Southern Economic Journal shows that adult use marijuana legalization has actually been associated with fewer opioid overdose deaths. And this is coming out of researchers affiliated with West Virginia University, Angelo State University in Texas, New Mexico State University, and the American Institute for Economic Research in Massachusetts, all working together to assess the effect of state-specific marijuana legalization laws on opioid-related fatalities. Investigators identified a consistent relationship between the adoption of adult use legalization and decreasing opioid overdose deaths, with early adopter states experiencing the most significant declines. And this is quote right out of the study. We find a statistically significant negative relationship between recreational marijuana laws and opioid overdose deaths. Recreational marijuana laws is associated with a decrease in approximately 3.5 deaths per 100,000 individuals, the study's authors determined. Quote, the effect increases with earlier implementation of recreational marijuana laws, indicating this relationship is relatively consistent over time. All that to say, the states that came about first are seeing the biggest drops in opioid overdose when it comes to legalizing cannabis, and especially with Florida and the pill mill crisis we've experienced with the guinea pigs that the Sackler family created in the VA system with the opioid epidemic. It is highly important that we move forward and that our legislators pay attention to this as we look at adopting adult use cannabis laws in the state of Florida. Now, when adopting adult use cannabis, there's always challenges because a lot of politicians just see the tax revenues. And this is something that's happening in Michigan right now that I think is important to pay attention to, because in Michigan, there's an industry association that has filed a legal challenge to halt lawmakers' cannabis tax hike. And so earlier this month, lawmakers passed a budget bill in the state of Michigan imposing a 24% wholesale tax on marijuana products sold in the state. And the tax increase will take effect January 1st of 2026. Last week, the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association filed litigation declaring the tax hike to be illegal because it improperly amends the state voter-initiated marijuana legalization law. And they argue that any changes to marijuana-related taxes must be approved by a 3/4 supermajority in both chambers. Another group has also filed a similar suit, and the lawmakers narrowly passed the budget bill despite significant pushback from both cannabis advocacy and industry groups. Raising the taxes on adult use cannabis products is just going to escalate prices out of reach for many consumers, and this will drive a growing percentage of consumers back to the unregulated market, and thereby undermines the primary goal of legalization, which is to provide adults with safe, affordable, and above ground access to lab tested products of known purity, potency, and quality. And I think that's something that we're still lacking in the state of Florida, is that quality. And despite the fact that we're a medical state, we definitely want to continue to hold our folks accountable. That's one of the things that we've seen in some of the adult use states that get it right, is when you create a more open market, when you don't have license caps, when you're not overly taxing it, folks will want to move from the gray market and the legacy market into a legal, a market that folks can operate in, that are produced safe and quality tested products, and people appreciate that. Now, one last medical study I think is important to look at, and I'm going to butcher this because I'm not up to date with my Latin, but
I'll correct you, no problem.
Laryngoscope investigated otolaryngology. Okay,
Otolaryngology.
Oh yeah, exactly. produced case control data in that journal, and researchers that were affiliated with Houston's Methodist Hospital, the Department of Otolaryngology, assessed the rates of chronic rhinosinusitis, allergic rhinitis,
Close enough.
and chronic rhinitis,
Rhinitis.
rhinitis in a nationally represented sample of over 25,000 cannabis consumers and over 113,000 matched controls. And contrary to the investigators' expectations, subjects who consume cannabis were less likely than non-users to suffer from symptoms of sinonasal diseases, with more frequent consumers possessing the lowest risk. The inverse relationship persisted regardless of whether subjects smoked cannabis or orally ingested the marijuana products. And given the known detrimental impact of tobacco smoking use on sinonasal tissue and inflammation, it was expected that patients who more regularly use cannabis would also be more likely to have sinonasal inflammatory diseases, especially in those who were smoking it. However, the present study results do not support this hypothesis. Shocker, right? That something that is a more potent anti-inflammatory than acetaminophen is actually helping people rhinitis. And I think that rhinitis, and I think that is
Rhinitis.
rhinitis, and I think that's something to really look. I'm not a doctor, even though I spent 30 years in college.
I just love correcting you. That's all.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. But I just think it's important that even scientists can recognize that they're biased around cannabis, that you think, oh, smoking weed is bad for you. And then you see studies like this that come out and be like, well, cannabis has anti-inflammatory properties. As a matter of fact, if you've been a lifelong tobacco user and you quit and you switch to cannabis, you're going to see some amazing results that may shock you. And so, again, consult your physician, get your medical recommendation, and definitely, again, educate yourself and continue to educate your doctors, because if you can take away anything from this show, everybody needs more education when it comes to cannabis. Patients, doctors, law enforcement, the legal system, and especially our politicians. So that's why we have you here each and every week in the rotation with amazing guests like Tiffany Hilton, Esquire, like Dr. Barlev Schleider. And we're going to continue to bring you amazing guests. We have some amazing guests coming up in the coming weeks. So I want you to continue to tune in and jump in the rotation each and every Sunday. But we cannot do it without the support of people like you. So become a member of Suncoast Normal. Join National Normal's organization. Become a card-carrying member of the National Organization of the Reform of Marijuana Laws. And, of course, do your part. It's not enough just to become a member. Get off the couch. Join us for lobby days. Gary's going to be going up to Tallahassee in the coming weeks to hound the politicians and make sure that they are doing right by you. And he could use the backup. Gary's pretty good at cornering them in the hallway, but they love to duck out in their little secret entrances and back doors, which is why we need more people in those hallways so they can't go anywhere and they have to take the time to have those conversations. And we can't do that.
I should mention that there's a bill right now that I'm pushing to various people in the Senate right now, which increases the number of qualifying conditions to include opioid dependence. Now, if we can get that to go through, we can possibly reverse the original law, which basically bars people in rehab facilities from being able to use cannabis because they could be using it to reduce their dependence on opioids.
Oh, Gary, I'll never forget the documentary I saw of the rehab in Maine that opioid addicts were going to.
Genesis, yeah.
Yeah, and to see heroin addicts literally go through those delirium tremors and wake up and do a dab and see everything subside, see those symptoms, provide them some relief. And I mean, the withdrawals of opioid withdrawal. It's just rough. And Carlos says that sounds like a normal morning for him to wake up and do a dab and face the day.
It's like that's my morning plus a cup of coffee.
Carlos, we got to invent a greca so you can have your cafecito and do a dab at the same time. We need some type of apparatus.
You guys know what this episode reminded me of? Like when I was younger and I was smoking weed all the time and it was like more taboo, I had like this brilliant idea. It was like, if I just show up to work every day high, they would just think I'm naturally high.
Mhm.
Like that's the way I am naturally. That he's not high, he just like acts that way, right? Completely backfired. Everybody knew that I was stoned all the time.
It's almost like a lawyer who once recommended to a friend of mine who was afraid of getting arrested for DUI to take a shot in the car while he was waiting for the police to come over there and say, "Oh no, I saw you. I was just settling my nerves. I hadn't drank anything prior to this." So
Wow, that's
So
heavy.
Tiffany, if somebody comes up to my car and it's like, "Hey, I smell weed," and I'm like, "No, I just smell like that's my BO." Like I just didn't wear deodorant this morning.
Yeah, I mean, you should try it.
Well, it's my cologne. Can't buy for men.
You're like, call me after you try that.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, look, Tiffany, we appreciate you being a great sport and hanging on through the news and being with us throughout today. Again, we appreciate for the great work you're doing for folks who can't afford attorneys in our court system, and you stepping up to protect their civil rights. For so many folks in this society, poverty in a lot of ways is a death sentence. Whether it's in the medical system or the legal system. And so I'm so blessed that we have people like you out there who don't do it for the money. You do it because it's the right thing to do. And we need more people in the society to do the right thing without a profit motive. So then that way we can get back to being human and understanding the human connections are the most important thing that we have. So, and with all that, we're going to leave folks on an amazing closing note to step up, get out there, donate, get active, and most important thing is peace.